Now, as part of my sort of job, I suppose, as a photographic tour instructor and guide, I see one of my jobs is to try and remind people to unplug all their gear and make sure they pack it up when we change hotels. You know, check the safe, bring their money, bring the passport, all the paperwork and that kind of stuff. And so one day here I was going around and asking everybody at breakfast, have you got your passport? Have you got your money? Everybody's going, yeah. And one bright spark piped and said, oh, Robin, have you got your stuff? And I said, yeah. And carried on. And so we set off, and about half an hour later we pulled over at a sort of panoramic view of the scenery there, and I suddenly got this horrible sinking feeling in my stomach. I thought, oh, maybe I better check. And so of course I went and checked, and of course where was my passport? It was still in the safe back in the hotel. So I had a word in the driver's ear, and without breaking any too many speed limits, he just floored it, and we went back to the hotel and got back in 45 minutes. Anyways, I was a butt of everybody's jokes. Now, in Cuba, there is no advertising, full stop. There is no advertising for consumable goods, partly because there are not that many consumable goods available, and partly because I guess it's just not part of their life. You know, it's a very strange place to be because, of course, in the West, we're just flattened by the sheer weight of advertising. Here, there is nothing, apart, of course, from telling everybody who's the boss. And so here's the commandant in charge, is Fidel Castro, of course, just in a main park in Cienfuegos, I think this was. And so these signs are all over the place. And so, of course, as a group, we were fascinated, and we stopped at almost every political poster imaginable. It used to take us forever to get round various places. So some great bits of artwork around, very sort of, you know, Cold War, dating back to the 1959 Cuban Revolution. Because of that, I thought I'll just do a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek poster. Here is a poster was of Raúl and Fidel Castro, and so I just took a little passport photo that I had of myself, or a headshot of myself, and I've just cut and pasted it on top of Raúl. So Raúl actually wasn't there, I painted him out, and I'll just show you how I did that. And if I turn that off, you can see I've got a number of layers here. I've got a couple of versions of myself, and these layers are at lowered opacity at 77%, and I think this one was at about 90%. But I've changed the blending mode. So when you change the blending mode, it goes from, you know, regular kind of photo, as like a regular photo, to something quite different. And what happens is, if I just go back to, I think it was overlay. Oh no, it was probably soft light. What it does is allow texture to come through, and I've got some texture sitting on top of my head here, and the texture is simply from, if I just turn that off, you might be able to see it. Yeah, there's just a tiny little bit of texture there, you can see. It's really just a very highly contrasted version of the same photo. I've just used levels here to pump it up. And so I put that on top. I then put some lines on the image, and I've got two versions of my image, again with the soft light blend mode, so it all sort of bleeds into it, in order to give you this kind of effect. I was kind of pretty pleased with that. I've painstakingly gone through and painted out, as you can see, these sort of metal plates on this billboard. I've painted out the text that was already there, which is something about the revolution, of course. And I probably can only show you this now that I'm not actually in Cuba anymore, in case I get pulled over by the military police and asked a lot of embarrassing questions. So now that I'm away and out of the country, I can show everybody what I did. So I thought it was a bit of fun, and I got somebody to tell me, you know, basically how to say. Forever, you know, just remember, always remember to check that you have your passport with you. In Spanish, of course, signed by El Presidente Nichols, which is me, of course. And I thought it was a little bit funny. And I managed to put the text behind the figure or the layers of myself, so it looks as though my image has been stuck on afterwards, a little bit of playing around with that. And probably the key thing that I like using Photoshop to do something like that with is with the text layer, which is no longer text, by the way. As you can see here, it's actually been rasterized, so it actually is pixels now. It's not really vector text. Is once you've done that, you can then use an amazing feature. Let's just go back to the right layer here. There it is. This is not vector anymore. It's just pixels. Is if I press Control or Command T and I choose, I can use this warp command, and this is amazingly useful if you're trying to fake the look of text or writing on something like a bent wall or a wobbly board. So you can actually distort it any which way. You can just do this kind of stuff. So you can have great fun doing that, but you can bend the text, or bend any shape in that case, in order to make it look as though it's actually not just a rectangle. But of course I've shot this at an angle, the perspective's all wrong, all that kind of stuff. So bending the text gives a little bit more sort of genuine feel to the final effect, I think anyway. It was a bit of fun. And I've tried to fade out again, obviously, the portrait of myself a little bit to try and get a similar turn to Fidel. That was kind of hard to do. And I've also selected some of these letters like recuerden and pasaporte, and I've actually selected, again, remember, because these are now pixels, because they've been simplified, they're no longer vector objects. So I've selected them, and using levels, I've just changed the brightness so that the text is a little bit odd and looks as though maybe it's faded in the sun over the years, because this billboard is probably 20 years old anyway, or 15 years old, so it's well and truly faded and dented and bashed around a little bit. Anyway, a little bit of fun, and something that you can do with a lot of photos. Doesn't take a lot of sort of Photoshop expertise, just takes a little bit of time.